return on capital employed. I have been telling you always that this is a calculation that you have learnt and you know it so well. It is EBIT upon total capital employed. So EBIT was how much? 22,70,000. Capital employed is 80 lakhs. We have learnt in details the significance of this ratio earlier. Here I would explain one alternate approach. It's not an alternative method, it's an alternative approach where in the denominator you would not take the total capital employed, but instead what you will do is you take the average capital employed. Alright friends, let us move ahead and look at this alternate approach of calculation. For this purpose we will have to first calculate average capital employed, and that will be opening capital employed plus closing capital employed divided by 2. To find the amount of opening capital employed, you have to look into the opening balance sheet, the share capital plus reserves and surplus and long term debt of opening balance sheet is summing up to 72,72,000 and closing is 80 lakhs. Average of this is coming to 76,36,000. So using this alternate approach, your numerator will remain same, that is EBIT. Denominator will be 76,36,000 and this comes to 29.73%. All of you already know what is the implication of return on capital employed. It indicates income generating capacity of the company on its total capital employed or on its average capital employed. Let me take you ahead and explain one more ratio which you have already learnt earlier, that was degree of financial leverage. With leverages we have learned this. DFL can be computed by taking EBIT divided by EBT, and you know one thing, that higher the DFL, the higher is the financial risk. Here what is happening, you could see EBIT is 22,70,000 and EBT is only 20 lakhs. You are getting 1.135 times as degree of financial leverage. Means for every 1 rupee of your EBT, your EBIT is 1.135, which indicates fairly very low degree of risk. Now supported by another information, that is interest coverage ratio 8.41 times. Do you know friends one thing, that both of these ratios are interconnected. Interest coverage ratio is 8.41 times. What does this mean? For every 1 rupee of interest commitment or for every 1 rupee of interest obligation, the EBIT is 8.41 times. On the other side, what is the interpretation of this line? For every 1 rupee of EBT, the company has 1.135 of EBIT. This indicates that the gap between EBIT and EBT on a relative basis is much lower. As a result, the botheration or the burden of interest is very low. This indicates good capacity to pay your interest. Let me incorporate other ratios. Return on capital employed, what we have seen, was 28.375%. This value may change if you use the alternate approach of taking average capital employed, but anyway both are fine. More importantly, when you compare that with the rate of interest on debt, it is only 12% and 15% because we have two different components of debt, and capital gearing ratio is 33.33%. Let me now summarize these all comparisons and draw a very important conclusion. Fact number 1, company is having high rate of return on capital employed. That means company has good capacity to generate return on capital employed. Whatever be the amount of capital that company is putting in its business, company is able to generate good amount of operating profit, and that is at approximately 28 to 29%. On the other side, the rate at which it can borrow money, it is just 12 to 15%. That is the understanding what we have. It is clear that ROCE, that is rate of return on capital employed, is substantially higher than the rate of interest prevailing on debt. That means if you are using borrowed funds, you will be able to generate more profit for the equity shareholders. A fair, clear, correct indication that it's a good time for you to borrow more money if you want to expand. Look at capital gearing ratio. It is just 33.33%, indicating that your outsider's fund is very small as compared to your owner's equity. So you have scope of using more of debt funds. It is indicated by that ratio as well. If you look into implications from degree of financial leverage and interest coverage ratio, all these ratios have one common conclusion, that yes, you can issue more amount as debt, you can raise more funds by debt, provided you have a plan to expand your business. So if you have a plan to expand your business, don't think of issuing new equity shares. This is a better condition for you to use more of debt in your capital. Therefore, for expansion, debt funds should be further used is an indication. Now look into one thing, friends. Individually, these ratios, if you think about idealness of these ratios, as in what would be an ideal capital gearing ratio, what would be an ideal DFL, or what would be ideal interest coverage ratio, I will not be concluding any ratio over there as ideal or not ideal. In fact, when you think about financial leverage, all these meaningful ratios put together, they can give a conclusive point that company has a chance or a great opportunity to use more of debt funds. So let me put that note over here, and you should be now writing this whole thing. So last paragraph written over there, NJ Limited has great opportunity to raise more amount through debt in case it needs additional funds for expansion. So I am sure you people have understood this whole thing, and let me now take you ahead and deal with some simple ratios, and getting started with a very simple ratio, that is gross profit ratio. Gross profit ratio is simply gross profit divided by total sales into 100. In our case, it is 80 lakhs divided by 2 crores into 100, and that would give you 40%. This ratio indicates gross profit margin on total sales. Another such profitability ratio would be net profit ratio. Here when I say net profit ratio, we should be very clear that it is net profit after tax. So this ratio is computed by taking net profit after tax divided by total sales into 100, and that would give you 14 lakhs by 2 crores into 100, and that is 7%. This ratio indicates percentage of NPAT, that is net profit after tax with total sales. And now what we do is we take up other ratios. Net profit ratio was basically indicating the net profit after tax ratio. If you want to have ratio of profit which is a pre-tax profit, you can have just an alternate name given to that ratio, that is pre-tax profit ratio. And how it is computed? Same way, but this time the numerator will be net profit before tax. The result this time is 10%. So this time this ratio indicates the percentage of NPBT, that is net profit before tax, with respect to total sales. Operating profit ratio, it is the ratio of EBIT with total sales, and that would be in this case 11.35%. Let us move ahead and take up other ratios, and here what we do is we start with operating ratio. Now here, what is operating ratio? It is operating cost divided by total sales into 100. Operating cost basically means cost of goods sold plus all your operating expenses. Cost of goods sold plus all your operating expenses. When I say all your operating expenses, it is inclusive of cash as well as non-cash expenses. So write up this whole thing, and you should know one more point, that operating profit ratio was 11.35% and operating ratio is 88.65%. Aggregate of these two would match up as 100% or simply 1. Let us move ahead and now take up next ratio, that is cost of goods sold ratio. Very simple ratio. It is simply cost of goods sold divided by total sales into 100. Simple point is, if gross profit ratio was 40%, cost of goods sold ratio has to be 60%. So aggregate of cost of goods sold ratio and gross profit ratio will always be 1. So 40% and 60% are these two ratios. Let us move ahead and take up some simple ratios ahead. This is the operating expenses ratio. Don't ever get confused with operating expenses ratio with operating ratio or operating cost ratio, because this is the ratio of operating expenses only. Here we are not taking cost of goods sold, here we are taking only and only operating expenses. So basically, from your operating cost, if you subtract cost of goods sold, you will be getting operating expenses. Alternatively, you take aggregate of cash operating expenses plus depreciation and amortization, that would also sum up to operating expenses, and the result what you get is 28.65%. This ratio indicates operating expenses as a percentage of sales. Now do one thing for your reconciliation. Do you know cost of goods sold ratio was 60%, and if you add operating expenses ratio, that is 28.65%. So you know what you will get? You will get your operating ratio. 60 plus 28.65 will give you 88.65 as your operating ratio. And next ratio that we should learn is financial expenses ratio, and that will be financial expenses. Financial expenses typically means all your interest expenses. So interest expenses will be a very small amount as compared to your total sales. So this ratio comes to just 1.35%. This ratio indicates financial expenses as a percentage of sales. Let us move ahead and now we take up the other ratio for discussion. And one more thing which we want to clarify over here, operating profit ratio itself will be financial expenses ratio plus pre-tax profit ratio, another meaningful connection among ratios. So it will be financial expenses ratio plus pre-tax profit ratio would sum up to operating profit ratio that we are getting as 11.35%. Next ratio, return on equity. Throughout the chapter dividend we have learned this, right? So return on equity is basically computed from the shareholders viewpoint, what rate of return is earned by shareholders. Here in this case, because there are no preference shareholders, we are computing this whether from total shareholders viewpoint or equity shareholders viewpoint, it will be the same result. So what we are getting over here is 23.33%. This ratio indicates post-tax earnings rate for the shareholders. I am telling you one thing once again, that this return on equity could have been computed in two different ways if it was presence of preference capital in the scenario. If preference share capital would have been there, then we will not compute this just once, but we will compute it twice. One from the viewpoint of total shareholders including preference shareholders, and one will be purely from the viewpoint of equity shareholders. However, because in our example this time we do not have preference capital, what you are computing as return on equity for total shareholders or from equity shareholders would be one and the same. Let us move ahead and take up other ratios. And next thing what you should write is return on investments. For this purpose, the term investments refers to fixed assets plus intangibles plus net working capital. So please understand what exactly we are trying to do. See, when we compute return on equity, understand how much is the money contributed by shareholders. But when you compute return on investment, it is about after utilizing this money what all these contributories have contributed. Ultimately, a company will make investments into long-term assets like fixed assets and intangible assets. It will also make its investment in working capital. Aggregate of all these will be investment for a company. on this investment what profit you are earning. So the profit that you should consider for this purpose is necessarily your operating profit, because the idea is similar to ROROCE, but this is different from ROROCE. ROROCE is talking about how much capital you have employed in the business, and return on investment is talking about how much of that money has been invested in your business. There will be therefore difference between rate of return on capital employed and return on investment. One more thing, in questions ahead I have designed a fantastic question to explain you the connectivity between return on capital employed and return on investment. It's a fantastic comparison which rarely you would find in any textbooks available, but I have designed that question mainly to explain you that particular concept. So let us move ahead over here and let us finish writing return on investment ratio. Investment in this case will be aggregate of fixed assets plus intangibles plus net working capital, which is summing up to 80 lakhs, and returns for this purpose will definitely mean EBIT, and that will be EBIT divided by total investments into 100, and that will be 22 lakhs 70,000 divided by 80 lakhs into 100, and that comes to 28.375%. Let us move ahead and now write something more about this. This ratio indicates that the company is able to generate 28.375% return on its investment in fixed assets and working capital. If the objective of determining this return is a post-tax rate of return, then it will be determined as below. Post-tax return on investment. Now friends, you know one thing, there is a factor that we have been learning all throughout, 1 minus T. When you multiply 1 minus tax rate to any calculation, that pre-tax amount will convert into post-tax amount. So if at all you want to find this ratio on a post-tax basis, it will be EBIT into 1 minus tax rate divided by total investments into 100. You can alternatively understand it little differently also. Whatever was your pre-tax return, 28.375%, tax rate being 30%, if you directly multiply 70% on this, you will directly get 19.8625%. Let us move ahead and now take up the other calculation, that is investment turnover ratio. This is the ratio of sales with respect to total investments in fixed assets and working capital. So here it will be investment turnover ratio as total sales divided by investments, and which will be 2 crores divided by 80 lakhs. What you get is 2.5. So this ratio indicates that for every rupee 1 of investment in fixed assets and working capital, the company can achieve sales of rupees 2.5. Let us move ahead and take up some more ratios for understanding. Earnings per share. Definitely I don't have to explain you this ratio. It is earnings available to equity shareholders divided by total number of equity shares. In fact, in this example that we are dealing, question itself has conveyed EPS, right? 14 lakhs divided by 40,000, that comes to 35, and you know the meaning also. Next ratio is also very simple ratio, dividend per share. It is total equity dividend divided by number of equity shares. So total equity dividend will be 6,72,000 divided by number of equity shares would give you 16.8 as dividend per share. Genuinely, I don't find any need to give any explanation on any of these ratios. We have learned these with long-term financing decisions in depth. Let us move ahead and deal with the other connecting ratios, that is dividend payout ratio. Now you know DPS, you know EPS, and dividend payout ratio will simply be 16.8 divided by 35 into 100, that comes to 48%. And what is the significance of this? Company is distributing 48% of its earnings by way of dividends. And if 48% is dividend payout ratio, you know one thing very well, retention ratio will be 52%. These concepts we have learnt with dividend chapter in details. So I don't have to explain this again. Dividend payout ratio plus retention ratio aggregate will always be 1. So 48% plus 52%, it will always be matching with 1. Let us move ahead and take up next very important ratio known as price earnings ratio. Now this is a very important ratio for stock analysis also. In our case, have you noticed the question has conveyed that the market price of equity share is rupees 336 and the earnings per share is 35. So when you work out this ratio, you get this as 9.6 times. Now I don't want to provide any explanation on this right now. You first finish writing this ratio as well as the paragraph given below that, and then I'll explain what exactly is this, and also write about dividend yield. Dividend yield, you have learned one thing very well with the dividend chapter already. Please understand one very important factor about price earning ratio, a very important ratio. So basically, computation wise it is very simple. You take the numerator as market price per share and the denominator as earnings per share. So here in this case we are getting 9.6 times. So what happens? What is the indication of this and what is the utility of this? This ratio has very high degree of utility. What is the utility of price earning ratio? Let me explain. If price earning ratio is 9.6 times, it gives you an indication that the market price of this share is 9.6 times of its earnings. So what will happen next year when the company is declaring its result and people are finding the EPS on annual basis? It is suppose some 12 rupees suppose, then the worth of the share will be 9.6 times of 12. If it is 25, the worth of the share will be 9.6 times of 25. If it is 50, it will be 9.6 times of 50. That means whatever be EPS, on that when you multiply this factor of price earning ratio is typically understood as a multiplier. A multiplier on what? A multiplier on the amount of EPS to land up at what should be the proper market price of this share, and then you compare with the actual prevailing market price. You will find whether the share is underpriced or overpriced, and accordingly you can take decisions of whether to buy this share or sell this share or simply hold it for some more time. These indications you get from price earning ratio, a very meaningful ratio. So I am sure you have completed writing this whole stuff already. Let us move ahead and write further. Book value per share, very simple thing. All your equity shareholders funds, when they are divided by number of equity shares, you get book value per share. So all your equity shareholders funds, when you are dividing by 40,000 shares, what you get is 150. So it is basically indication of net worth per share, but necessarily for the equity shares only. In case there was inclusion of preference share capital, in the numerator you should not include preference share capital, because this calculation is typically made only and only from the perspective of equity shareholders. And then the next ratio will be price to book value. So if you see the book value per share or the net worth per share that you have extracted from the balance sheet, it is 150, but compared to that the market price of the share is very high, it is 336. So market price of the share is standing at 2.24 times. What does that mean? This ratio is used to compare company's market price to its book value. If this ratio is greater than 1, which will indicate that the market price is greater than the book value, it shows what? That the stock is overvalued. That means suppose if this company is planning a wind up, you will not be able to encash 336, you will encash only what you find as book value per share. So we would say that the stock is overvalued. That would be end of the session.